about that idea, it's not going to play off, and investors are going to notice that too. So I would say do something that aligns with your authentic self.
Charles, it's great to see you again. We had a podcast a few years back, and here we are. And things have changed a little, so I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yeah, things have changed a lot.
Well, let's just say you won't admit it because you're one of the most humble people I've ever met, but you are absolutely killing it with lesser evil snacks. So this is going to be a treat, no pun intended, for the listeners. And I always like to start with a quote. And so I'm going to read it to you and just let me know what thoughts come to mind for you. I promise, Charles, I'm not going to stump you. Don't worry. Okay.
I'm getting nervous.
Yeah, I know you are. So it goes like this. We need to stop taking ourselves so seriously. Just slow down a bit and don't try to hit home runs right out of the gate. And that was something I found that you said at a certain point. And if you can recall what that meant to you at the time, I'd love to hear any feedback you have on it.
Yeah, I would say at the beginning, I failed so many times that, I guess I just kind of let the company take its own direction. And as long as I focused on the process, and the process was, trying to do my best every day and try to figure out, what would take the company to the next level. And that typically was trying to hire the right people, not spending my money foolishly, innovating, looking for new products, trying to build, great partnerships with some of our early retailers, and just didn't try to hit, didn't try to hit a home run. We tried to hit as many singles as we possibly could.
Well, it seems to be working out quite well for you. So for all those early stage entrepreneurs with less than 10 employees, please listen closely, because Charles' story and his real life entrepreneurial story is so great. And I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about how you kind of got into this entrepreneurial world with this business.
That's a great question. So I was in finance from, after, basically after I did my undergrad. I moved from Canada to Chicago. Anyways, I wanted to talk a little bit about what got me into it. In college, I suffered from a little bit of anxiety. I was having some panic attacks and stuff like that. And then they kind of followed me along, while I was in finance. And as I got closer to 40, sometimes I felt like I was crawling out of my skin. That's really, I think in our last podcast, we talked a lot about meditation and spirituality or whatever, but ultimately that's what led me to food. I started living a really holistic lifestyle, and I wanted to do something that allowed me to work on myself. And by starting a company, it was a really nice way to become the person that I wanted to be. It was essentially a process of actualization. I know it sounds kind of far reach, but I get to surround myself by people that I really cared about, and work on things that I really enjoyed doing. And all of a sudden, when there's a ton of stress in this business, and being an entrepreneur is super stressful, but for whatever reason, the environment was a lot better for me, and it allowed me to flourish.
And you came from a really stressful job because you were a bond trader.
Yep.
And you were up at all hours of the evening, calling into London and Tokyo. You had 6 computer screens.
You remember all
in your house. You never had a good night's sleep. So
yeah,
but then you kind of
was crazy,
And I love the story though about how you learned about this business and how you got into it. Do you mind sharing that?
How I learned about it was, I was ready. I believe so much in synchronicity. I was ready to make a change. And then a friend of a friend's father was selling the business. And the name Lesser Evil was kind of like Lesser Evil, that kind of, caught my attention. And they were making snacks. And, I was really into food. I think I'd been to a nutrition retreat or something like that at Kripalu at the time. I can't remember something. It all lined up. And anyway, so I bought the company not knowing what I was doing, and I took it from there.
Amazing. And now growing up, did you notice that you had any sort of entrepreneurial tendencies? Did you ever do anything like we always say? Did you ever like have a story of like the person who had a paper route or
Yeah,
anything
I
like
had a
that?
paper route
You
when I was
did? Seriously?
yeah, totally. Um, so my mom was really the impetus of me becoming an entrepreneur, because at a really young age, she taught me, she told me that I could sell ice to Eskimos, and she gave me a ton of confidence. Yes. So, so had always, and then I went back to graduate school, kind of knowing in my late mid-30s, I went back to graduate school and kind of knowing that I was ready to try something at some point, and I needed to learn some other skills other than my finance skills. I mean, bond trading was great because it taught me how to cut my losses really quickly, and I made a lot more losing trades than I made winning trades. So the mark of a good bond trader is that you get out of those trades really quickly. So I brought that kind of mentality to being an entrepreneur, where I probably launched 10 products, and failed every single time, but I didn't get attached to any one product until I found my hero product.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned you went to college, you even went to graduate. Did
Yep.
you feel that was a valuable experience as you look back and what you're doing now? Would you say I'd do that again?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I hear a lot about college, no college, all, graduate school, no graduate school. I would say undergrad was really valuable for me, because it allowed me to make a lot of mistakes really early as a kid. I was somewhat irresponsible. I don't want to get too much into my early years, but I did an extra year in university, because I would, every year I would drop my weakest course. I had a great time, and I came out, and I think I blew off a lot of steam, and that allowed me to be a little bit more responsible. I think a lot of these kids that come straight out and become entrepreneurs, I think it's amazing, but I think you miss some growing up. Graduate school, yeah, it was hit or miss. I mean, I definitely learned some stuff, but I think I would have been fine not going to graduate school. But I ultimately met my partner in graduate school, so some good did come of it. But it was definitely worth. It was a lot of money to. I'm unsure of whether it was worth it.
Okay, that's a great answer, by the way.
Yeah.
So, it seems that most entrepreneurs who are, well along their way, like you are, have a story of a nightmare time in the business and then a story of what we might call the dream. And so I'm wondering, can you share a story about the nightmare? And then, of course, we'll move into the dream.
Yeah. I would say the nightmare was, like, because Lesser Evil existed before I even got involved, and it had failed a couple of times. It was incredibly hard to raise money. And there came a time where I had to basically go to my parents and say, hat in hand, and say, hey, listen, I'm not sure if I can continue, because I was burning cash. I mean, we were burning probably, $75,000 to $100,000 a month. And I think that's pretty common for most entrepreneurs, but it was a real come to Jesus moment, because I knew when I took my parents' money that, I was all, I had to be all in, because I couldn't afford to lose it, so that was kind of a nightmare, but it worked out okay. But I felt, after being on Wall Street for so long, and I thought I'd become a real grown up. And then all of a sudden I wasn't a grown up anymore. I was back to being a college student or something like that, asking my parents for money.
I like the parents, right?
Yeah.
Okay. How about the dream?
The dream was, I think I made reference to this, is that if you do the right thing and you trying to live your authentic self, the dream is being, working on something that you feel is magical. And it's so important that you really dig what you're going to do. And if you do that, and you kind of align with your authentic self, work becomes kind of a playful thing. And that was what really got me excited. I mean, we are obviously vertically integrated, and we have our own factory, but there's an added sense of playfulness because we can invent things and stuff like that. So I love being playful, and I feel like I can be playful pretty much every day I come to work, and I really enjoy going to work every day. And I don't just say that, like it is
Yeah.
fun to just be here, and I love all the people I work with.
It's so special to have a business like that where it's like you're pinching yourself, like, is this for real?
Yeah.
And I saw you have a product called Spaceballs.
Yeah.
And like that sounds playful to me. And I don't want to assume, but did you kind of harken back to the movie at all? Or was that have
No,
nothing?
no, no. I mean, I love the name because obviously I watched Spaceballs when I
Yeah.
was a kid or whatever. But I was all into the Hubble telescope, and I think that the next frontier is space, and
Oh, I love
you
it.
know, so I was like, and yeah, it just felt right. It felt playful. It was like
Hmm.
kind of where I was going, in my own curiosity. If that makes any sense.
It does. And what are these red bars? REDD? I don't even know if I'm saying it right, but I saw something about it.
Yeah, so I've always been a nutrition bar guy. Like I like to try, I'm pretty mobile, so I always have some of these things in my bag. And I've
Yeah.
always wanted to have my own, bar company. And a while back I bought a bar line from some guy that was selling it, and I had the equipment. And then a friend, synchronicity, you can't make this stuff up, um, basically reached out to me and said, that they weren't sure that this red bar was going to survive because it was, continue. Would I be interested in something like this, knowing that I had kind of done something similar with Lesser Evil? And I said, yeah, I'm really, really interested. So we did a deal where they get to keep some stock, and we would run it, and you see if we could, make a run for it. And so I'm making bars. I'm super excited about it. We're trying to make some improvements. We've rebranded it a little bit. We think it's, a very cool product. It's low sugar, high fiber, mostly organic ingredients. So
Ooh, okay. I love it. I'll have to make an order, to be honest with you.
yeah,
It's hard to find a good bar, I have to
it
say.
is hard to find a good bar.
Now, what about mentorship? We always talk about that with the early stage entrepreneurs. Did you ever have a mentor?
Rob, I was thinking about this. I don't know if I ever had one of those early ones. Like
Yeah.
part of being in Danbury was like, it was great because we were so under the radar, and there's nothing around here. It's kind of an industrial town, and most food brands are in Boulder or San Diego or Portland.
Totally.
Like, so I didn't. I mean, I had lots of people who influenced me along the way, but I would say I had many mentors, and now I probably have more, because some of my investors are entrepreneurs, and have been in the food business. So now I do have kind of a bunch of people that I can bounce ideas off. But at the beginning, yeah, I didn't really have that, unfortunately.
Is there anybody now, even from afar, that maybe you don't, have contact with, but just somebody who inspired you, kind of their philosophies or anything of that nature that comes to mind?
No, nothing that comes to
No.
mind.
Okay.
Sorry.
What about, I've talked to you a little bit about these 6 essential traits that we believe entrepreneurs must have: visionary, passionate, problem solver, driven, taker, responsible. Do you feel you have those 6?
I think I have. I think I have elements of all 6. I mean, obviously, some of them resonate a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I have no problem taking risk. I love taking risk. The more risk, the more reward. I would say I have a vision. Or vision or a mission. Whatever, we would kind of both the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm super passionate. Responsible. I would say I'm somewhat responsible, not all the time.
That's so good.
But probably the biggest one is I'm a problem solver. I think if there's one of those that resonates well with me, is that when I see problems, I see opportunities. I've never tapped out and said I can't figure this out. I think that if you're curious and you're flexible, you can figure things out. There's nothing that you can't solve.
Yeah, I love that. There are 8 must-dos that we always recommend to entrepreneurs. And one of them, I just want to segue from a thing you said a moment ago, which is having a clear vision. And so do you think, it sounds like you do you think in 10-year timeframes? And, how do you value the importance of having a clear vision or mission for the company?
I think the mission or the vision is super important, particularly as you hire your first employees. I mean, we started off, there were like 2 or 3 people. And then as we developed our mission, we were able to hire better and better people because people want to be tied to a mission. And if you don't have a mission, it gets hard to get, the kind of people, I call them the right people on the bus.
Right.
So, but I've never had a 10-year plan. I still don't have a 10-year plan. I'm still, because the market changes so much what it's, valuing, that I'm constantly readjusting my plan every year or every 6 months. We have a sales conference, and we do this thing where we have everyone come into the office, and I kind of give a state of the union. And every 6 months, I talk about what I'm focused on these 6 months and how that's changed from the previous 6 months. And I think that's, sometimes people will be like, oh, you were wrong or you were right. But I think it's really important that I articulate that so our employees know exactly where we're going.
Yeah. So thank you for actually bringing that up, because we have these 9 stages that we talk about when you go through in your business. And one of them is communicating frequently with your employees. And so I'm wondering how that shows up for you at Lesser Evil Snacks.
So I don't even have, I mean, I technically have an office, but I don't use my office. I only use my office for interviews such as this, right?
For a podcast.
So I typically sit out in the middle, as I showed you before our thing, that, we have a bullpen and there's no offices.
Beautiful office space.
And so everybody listens to every single conversation I have, and I communicate with everybody every single day, so it's certainly a big part of my culture because I consider these people all my friends.
Yeah.
So.
Can you talk more about the State of the Union that you do?
Yeah, it's usually like a 30-minute talk that I give to, about 60 or 65 of our employees. We've got about 40 people in the office. We've got, 10 or so salespeople that are probably 8 salespeople that work remotely. And then there's a bunch of people that come from the warehouse and the factory. And I just kind of give the State of the Union, how we did, the last 6 months, where we're focused. Like big thing for us last year was growth, for instance. And then as interest rates started to rise, I got more and more focused on, okay, we got to really get dialed in on our margin structure and get dialed in on EBITDA percentages and all those things that are important because interest rates are much higher than they were before.
Yeah.
As an example.
Can you talk about the importance of getting feedback from your customers and your clients as early as possible and as often as possible?
Oh, totally. I think part of what made us super successful is we never went too wide. We went deep. And we had, for the first 5 or 6 years, we only had 5, 10 really important accounts. And I probably developed relationships with almost every single one of them where we would go in and talk about what they were seeing and what they liked about what we were doing, where we could improve and stuff like that. And I was constantly had dialogues with them. And I innovated around a lot of what they thought. And I kind of just let the business, basically move in the direction that my biggest stakeholders thought it should move. I wasn't stubborn. I didn't say, oh, that flavor doesn't work. Give it more, give it another chance. Like we did what our partners told us to do.
Mm-hmm. It's great. And then what about the thought around always having a plan B? I mean, have you ever found yourself having to?
I have no plan B. I think the minute you take friends and family money, you can't have a plan B. Is like there's no failure's not an option.
I love it. But what about,
at least for me, it was,
Yeah, no. And what about though, within just the way you operate the business? So maybe, we move into this type of product line, but if that's not going to work, maybe we'll move into something different. Does that resonate at all?
Oh, totally does. Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So a little evolution for us, I thought maybe that might be useful for your listeners is that we used to have a lot of niche products that fit my lifestyle, right? Because I was being
Right.
playful and I wanted to be grain free and I wanted to do this and I wanted to do that. Um, and a lot of those categories that I was playing in are super small. And as I evolved, we realized we had the success with popcorn, that I realized we needed to be in bigger categories. And the Spaceballs that we just launched are an effort to go into a much bigger category with with much greater velocities, where I can really grow a lot faster than doing a lot of these little niche products, if that makes
Yeah.
any sense.
Okay, that makes total sense. What about core values? I mean, you really have such an amazing culture at Lesser Evil. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the importance of discovering your core values and how you make sure that, the company is true to those.
We have a values mural on our office wall, and I basically I think there's 12 of them on there,
Mhm.
and everybody sees them every single day and knows what they are. Yeah, I think it's super, super valuable exercise to write those things down and then let all your employees know what they are.
Mhm. And when you're recruiting and hiring and even going through review processes and things like that, are these an important sort of foundation for you when you're dealing
Yeah.
with your team?
One of the best things that I learned about hiring was when I first got into, because we care so much about attitude, when I first got into Lesser Evil, I would look to hire for skill, like, okay, we need this, we need that. And I ended up getting some employees that I wasn't exactly thrilled with. Um, when we made the shift to hiring for attitude, thinking that we could teach the skills or they could learn the skills over time, and that we only wanted can-do people, all of a sudden everything changed. We
Mm,
started getting, the culture just got a lot better, a lot faster. And
interesting.
now we try to weed out, like, we still don't hire perfectly. Sometimes they can trick you pretty quickly, but if we
Sure.
find someone we don't like that's a taker, not a giver, um, we try to weed them out real fast and get rid of them.
And are those a couple of the values like can do attitude, giver, not taker, something like that?
Yeah, exactly right.
Totally. Okay. Very cool. I wanted to ask you about capitalizing on coaching and training and mentoring, because I know, you're with your leadership team, you place emphasis on listening from a place of empathy and being open to real human conversations. And I just love that kind of culture. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you cultivate that at the company.
It's funny, a lot of our employees, we all have issues, right? And, and it's important to remember that work is a privilege, that you get to work with these people on a regular basis, and they have real lives and real concerns outside of work. And that in order for them to feel like they're a complete person, they need to be holistically listened to, and they need to feel like they're being heard, not just, on a work level basis, that you care about what's going on with their families and and their kids and what's happening. And if they need extra time to work on something outside of work, or, we try to develop like whole people here. And it may not be the most efficient way to do business, because I've seen people like, okay, I expected, a 45-hour week or whatever. We don't really keep track of that kind of stuff. We figure that if people are happy, we're going to get the best work, and it may not happen in an 8-hour workday. It may happen in a 6-hour workday or a 5-hour workday. And we try to give people as much space as they possibly, as much space as they possibly need.
It's inspirational, really. And I hope that entrepreneurship and leaders of entrepreneurial companies like you, continue to move in that direction and look at the whole person and not
And I
just,
caveat that just a little bit,
please,
because
yes.
I'm also, because I want to be dead honest. I'm also a person that believes in working in the office. Like, since COVID started,
Yeah.
we were big proponents of not being remote. I'm a big believer that problems get solved together, and they get solved by hanging out in that dugout that I tell you about and talking about everyone else's problems around us, and we kind of collectively problem solve. And I don't think that happens with remote work. So we've been in the office, kicking it out for the last, 3 years. It hasn't always been perfect. Sometimes
Right.
we had one group, one cohort and then another cohort, but we're a big believer in office
Mm.
culture.
Yeah. I'm wondering, do you have any thoughts on where that might move, like in the business world? I'm always so curious about that. And I happen to agree with you, by the way.
Where I think that we're probably 30%, 40% more productive in the office than we would
Yeah.
be remote.
Mhm.
I think that when I talk to other entrepreneurs, they agree and they're trying to get their employees to come in. But I've I've talked to a bunch of people though that say it's tough to get their employees to come
And
in.
tough. Yeah.
Especially the younger generation, they like this
Yeah.
remote work.
Yeah.
Because we didn't go that route, we don't have that problem, thankfully. But
That was the culture. You took a
yeah,
stand. I love
it's
it.
difficult. And I told them that you just got to rip the Band-Aid off. And if you lose some people because of it, you lose some people because
That's
of
right.
it.
Yeah. Again, it's
Yeah.
staying true to who you are. And that's an
Yeah.
important thing to do. Okay. Last question. Any advice you might give to an early stage entrepreneur?
I would say, going back a little bit, you want to do something that's going to allow you to shine, because retailers will sense on your enthusiasm. They can feel it. It has to be authentic. So like, you may have a great idea, but unless you're really passionate about that idea, it's not going to play off. And investors are going to notice that too. So I would say do something that aligns with your authentic self.
Mm.
It's much easier to feel, I'm all about feelings these days, and being grateful and finding kind of love and joy and all these kind of things. So do something that allows you to keep your heart wide open, and I believe in kind of a gratitude practice. So if you're grateful to come to work every day, you're probably going to succeed.
It's so good. Do you have a specific practice, or is it just something that you're aware of
No, I
throughout
have a
your day?
practice in the mornings that I try to think of. It's like a 10-minute practice where I try to, see my future self and feel all those emotions that I want to feel. So, and, hopefully that allows me to feel those a little bit more consistently.
That's so good. I would say if there's one nugget of wisdom that you took out of the entire conversation, and there's probably 40 nuggets of wisdom, please, listener, listen to what Charles just said. It's so powerful.
Thanks.
Charles, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. It meant the world.
I really appreciate it, Rob. Thanks so much for doing it again with me.
Absolutely. And to all the amazing entrepreneurs listening today, I greatly appreciate you spending time with us. And I wish you all much love and gratitude.